In the heart of an ancient African village nestled between mountains and rivers, there lived a man named Olumide. Known for his charm, wit, and unmatched wealth, Olumide was a figure of admiration and envy. His wealth allowed him to live a life of comfort, and he was revered by the villagers who saw him as a symbol of success and power. Despite his fortune, Olumide had one flaw. He craved companionship more than anything else. Though he had everything a man could desire, he felt a gnawing emptiness, a void he believed only the love of many wives could fill. Olumide's charm drew many women to him, and soon he began to marry, one woman after another, each time convinced that she would be the one to bring him fulfillment. With every marriage, his expectations grew, but so did his insatiable hunger for more. Over the years, Olumide took 70 wives, each more beautiful and gracious than the last. Yet, as his household grew, so did his restlessness. He found himself surrounded by people but felt lonelier than ever, his heart aching with a desire that refused to be satisfied. The elders of the village, wise and observant, noticed Olumide's predicament. They had watched him rise from a young man with potential to a wealthy man burdened by a thirst he could not quench. Concerned for him and for the example he set, the elders approached Olumide, urging him to find peace within himself rather than in the arms of countless women. They reminded him that desire, when unchecked, could consume a person and leave them hollow. But Olumide was stubborn. He laughed off their advice, convinced that his wealth and influence made him untouchable. To him, the elders' warnings were just superstitions from a bygone era. He believed that if he could find the right woman, she would complete him, and the yearning within him would finally cease. With each new wife, he hoped that his longing would fade, not realizing that his relentless pursuit was slowly destroying him. One day, as Olumide journeyed to a neighboring village in search of yet another bride, he encountered an old woman by the roadside. Dressed in ragged clothes, her eyes sparkled with a mysterious wisdom, and she carried a bundle of herbs that emitted a potent fragrance. Olumide's curiosity was piqued. Sensing the void within him, the old woman introduced herself as a healer and offered him something unusual, a remedy that would finally grant him peace and satisfaction. Olumide, eager and desperate, listened intently as the healer explained that the charm she possessed would quiet his endless yearning, but it came with a condition. Intrigued, he agreed, thinking that he had found the solution to his problems at last. He believed the charm would fulfill his deepest desires, that his journey for companionship was coming to an end. Little did he know that the healer's gift would lead him down an unexpected path. The healer presented Olumide with the charm, a small pendant made from a strange metal, which shimmered with an otherworldly light. She explained that for the charm to work, he could only seek another woman if he saw her spirit reflected in a pool of moonlit water at midnight. Olumide found this condition peculiar, but thought little of it, believing he could easily fulfill it. Confident in his ability to attract anyone he desired, he accepted the charm with gratitude, convinced it would lead him to ultimate satisfaction. The healer's gaze softened as she handed him the charm, a glint of something unsaid in her eyes. She warned Olumide that desire was a tricky master, and that this charm would test him in ways he couldn't foresee. But Olumide, blinded by his impatience, brushed aside her caution. He was eager to try the charm that very night, certain that it would reveal a new, irresistible love, and finally grant him the fulfillment he craved. That night, Olumide walked to the river near his village, the charm heavy in his pocket. The full moon cast a silver glow over the landscape, illuminating the water with a ghostly light. His heart pounded as he approached the water's edge, excitement and anticipation coursing through him. He believed he would see a vision of a beautiful woman, her spirit waiting to guide him to his ultimate happiness. Kneeling by the water, he peered into its depths, awaiting the sight that would change his life. But as the moonlight danced on the surface, Olumide saw only his own reflection staring back at him. His face looked weary, his eyes clouded with a loneliness he could no longer ignore. Frustrated, he convinced himself that he hadn't waited long enough, that the charm needed time. Yet, as he gazed deeper, his own reflection seemed to grow older, more burdened with each passing moment. Disappointed, he left the river, telling himself that the charm's true power would reveal itself soon. Night after night, Olumide returned to the river, each time hoping to see the spirit of a new woman who would satisfy his desires. But every night, his reflection appeared more distorted, older, and sadder. His skin seemed to sag, his eyes grew dim, and the charm he carried felt heavier. Still, he persisted, unwilling to let go of the hope that he would soon find the woman who could finally complete him. The charm, however, seemed to be working against him, showing him only himself. As his nightly ritual continued, his wives grew distant. They began to sense his restlessness and dissatisfaction, feeling the weight of his expectations pressing down on them. Some of them left, unwilling to remain in a marriage where they were not cherished. Others stayed but became cold and distant, feeling neglected and unappreciated. Olumide's household, once full of life and laughter, grew silent and somber, mirroring the emptiness he carried within. As more of his wives departed, Olumide found himself alone in his grand house, surrounded by wealth but devoid of companionship. His attempts to quench his desire had left him more isolated than ever, and his once thriving household had turned into a shadow of its former self. His wealth, once a symbol of his success, now felt like a cage, trapping him in a life of unfulfilled longing. The charm's condition, once a minor inconvenience, had become an insurmountable barrier. Despite his isolation, Olumide refused to acknowledge the wisdom in the healer's words. He remained convinced that he would one day see a new spirit in the water, a woman who would finally make him whole. Yet the charm continued to show him only his own reflection, growing more haggard and defeated with each passing night. His charm, meant to bring him peace, now seemed like a curse, binding him to his own loneliness and regret. One night, as he stared at his own weary face in the moonlit water, Olumide began to feel a creeping sense of despair. His reflection seemed to speak to him, urging him to confront the emptiness he had tried so hard to ignore. For the first time, he saw himself not as a man of wealth and power, but as someone lost in his own desires. He realized that his constant pursuit of new love had led him to a life of solitude, stripping him of the joy and peace he once sought. The healer's words echoed in his mind, her warning about the dangers of unchecked desire now clear as day. Olumide understood that the charm had been meant to guide him, not to punish him. It was not his wives who had failed to fulfill him. It was his own heart, burdened by insatiable longing. In that moment, he felt a spark of humility, a willingness to change. But he knew that redemption would not come easily. Desperate to break free from his torment, Olumide decided to seek out the old healer who had given him the charm. He journeyed to the neighboring village where he had met her, his heart heavy with regret. Days passed as he searched, but the healer was nowhere to be found. His journey became a time of reflection, each step reminding him of the choices he had made, the wives he had lost, and the emptiness he had created within himself. After days of searching, Olumide found the healer in a secluded grove. She was sitting beneath a tree, her eyes closed as if in meditation. When she saw him, she smiled knowingly, as though she had been expecting him. Olumide fell to his knees before her, pleading for her help, begging her to remove the charm's curse. He confessed his despair, his loneliness, and his regret, hoping that she would show him mercy and release him from his suffering. The healer listened to Olumide's pleas with a gentle, knowing expression. When he finished, she spoke softly, reminding him that the charm was not a curse, but a mirror of his own heart. She explained that true fulfillment could only be found within, not in the arms of others. Olumide's desire had blinded him to this truth, leading him down a path of endless craving and dissatisfaction. She urged him to seek peace within himself, to learn to be content without constantly reaching for more. Her words struck Olumide like a thunderbolt. He had spent his life searching for happiness outside himself, never realizing that the key to his fulfillment lay within. The healer's wisdom cut through his despair, filling him with a newfound understanding. He thanked her, feeling a sense of clarity he had never known. For the first time, he felt ready to change, to let go of his endless pursuit and embrace the wisdom he had ignored for so long. Olumide returned to his village with a heavy but enlightened heart. The journey back was filled with memories of his past mistakes and the faces of the wives he had pushed away. He realized that he had a long path of redemption ahead of him, a journey that would require humility, patience, and the courage to face his own shortcomings. The village welcomed him back, but he could sense a distance between him and the people, a barrier that he had created through his own actions. Determined to make amends, Olumide sought out the remaining wives who had stayed despite his neglect. He approached each of them with humility, expressing his regret and his newfound understanding of the harm he had caused. Some forgave him, moved by his change of heart, while others remained distant, wary of his promises. Olumide accepted their responses with grace, knowing that he could not undo the past, but could only strive to be better in the present. As time passed, Olumide worked to transform himself from a man of desire into a man of wisdom. He spent his days helping the villagers, using his wealth to support the community rather than indulging his own whims. His efforts did not go unnoticed, and slowly, the villagers began to respect him, not for his charm or his wealth, but for his humility and dedication. Olumide found a sense of peace in his new role, a quiet satisfaction that filled the void within him. Though he still felt the sting of his past mistakes, Olumide found solace in the knowledge that he was no longer controlled by his desires. He had learned to be content within himself, a lesson that had taken him a lifetime to understand. His transformation inspired others, especially the young men of the village who looked up to him as a model of strength and wisdom.
What do you think about this man? Comment below.